Hi everyone, it's Janet and welcome to my channel. Today I have the June Hero Arts kit. This is all about the jungle and there's all kinds of wonderful images in this kit. I have to admit that when I first saw it come out I was like, I don't think I'm that interested in it. But the more cards I saw people doing, the more I got excited about it. Now I'm super excited to try it. And this month we have this beautiful fuchsia ribbon wrapped around it. So I've gotten it out of the package. I'm going to take the stamp set out here and put it on white cardstock so you can see this a little bit better. Now if you've been following this at all, you have already seen these images, but we've got some great tropical and jungle images like this branch, the snake. There is a bird up here. It's a toucan. I think that's how you say it. And then we have a tiger, a leopard, and then this elephant. There's a tiny little coconut there, at least I think that's what that is. There's a bunch of flowers and grasses and ferns you'll see here, and there's a really nice flamingo, and then there's a really nice pineapple that I'm really excited to have in my collection as well. So let's take a quick look at all of the dies. As is normal, we have a die for every single image. The only thing we don't get dies for are all the sentiments, and there are 7 sentiments I believe in this kit, and then usually we get some kind of specialty die, and this month we're getting the vine dies that you see here. There's one long one that's kind of shaped in an L there, and then a straight one, and these make not only the cut but they also leave a bit of an embossed impression, so they're quite nice to add for your collection and to use as scene setters in your cards. So next we're going to look at the little bag of extras, and first is this Hero Intensified Black ink. Now this is a new ink to them and it's a hybrid ink, which means you can use it for either watercolor or alcohol-based markers like Copics or Spectrum Noir. So this is the first hybrid I've ever owned and I'm pretty excited to give it a try. It's also supposed to be very, very dark black, hence its name, Intensified Black. And if I like this one, I have a feeling I will be ordering it. Next is this really cool abstract leaf pattern. And sorry for my little cutouts on the left side there. I was making another project and this was just handy to grab for you. But anyway, I really like this stencil and it's a 6x6 size, so good for lots of crafting projects. Now this is the Daniel Smith extra fine watercolor that comes with the kit this month. There are many colors here. In total there are 18. Which is a good selection, and they have pretty much every color you're going to need to use with your images, typically from tan to orange to all kinds of greens here and several colors in between. So I'm looking forward to using my water brush on this and giving it a try. Okay, I told you I was really excited about this kit, and so excited I actually bought a couple of extras or add-ons this month, and I hardly ever do that. But I saw this fantastic palm tree set and it's color layering on top of it and had to have that. I just don't have a good palm tree in my collection, so that made sense for me to purchase this one, and I'm pretty excited about it. I like the little monkeys and I think there's a lot of potential in this set. I also picked up this fancy die. It is called Leaves and Vines Fancy Die, and this is what it produces. And it actually has a little bit of an embossing feature to it, to some of these leaves. You can kind of see that here. It's not really pronounced, but it's definitely there. And I'm hoping that I can use this as not only a backdrop, but perhaps I can even cut a few of these leaves out to create a little bit of a frame like they show with the other die that they sold with this month's kit, which is the kind of like this frame die. So I'm going to see if I can have some success with that. Just to forewarn you, I did not use any of these add-ons on part 1 today, but I will be using them in part 2, so look for that if you want to see these add-ons being used. So I'm going to begin card 1 by taking this vine image and I put it on some light post-it note paper and cut that out so that I can use it as a mask. And then I'm using that mask along with my stamp to judge where to put these two images together to create a longer vine that's going to be centered in the middle of my card panel. And you can continue this to get as long a vine as you want for a border or whatever. I always make my masks from scratch by cutting them out on Post-it note paper, and then I apply Zig two-way glue on the back of it and let it dry. That's called two-way glue because when it dries it is removable. And this works well, for me anyway, as an inexpensive alternative to masking paper, which comes already with adhesive on the back. So now here I'm putting on the second vine, overlapping on the top of my mask so it doesn't mess up the first vine that I stamped, and I will just carefully take that off, and I'll put that aside because I do keep those and put them with my stamp set when I'm done. Now this is watercolor paper, and I'm going to use my Zig Clean Color markers and water down that marker ink. And I'm using 3 different colors. I start out with pale green, then I'm putting in some light green, and then finally some mid green to add some shadow there. The last thing I'm going to do is use some oxide ink. This is picked raspberry. Actually, it's not oxide, it's just regular distress ink. And I'm going to use my water brush, and I'm going to splatter a whole bunch of that on there. And I'm going to kind of fast forward a little bit through it so you don't have to watch all of that. But then when I finish, I wanted a few more blotches that were bigger, so I just used my water brush and just randomly started putting dots down. And then I liked finally that finished look. So I let that dry, and then next I'm going to show you my pineapple coloring. I'm using again the 3 greens, pale green, light green, and mid green for these tops on the pineapples. And then I'm going to take some bright colors and color each pineapple in. And those are very simple in coloring. I'm not trying to shade anything when it comes to the pineapple fruit part of it. We start out with a yellow, a pink, the cobalt blue, the bright yellow, and finally light violet. And I will point out to you that yes, of course, you could do this with your Daniel Smith watercoloring samples. I'm not sure why I didn't pull them out to do this. I was just so excited for some reason to use my clean color markers. I kind of forgot actually. But by all means, use the samples from Daniel Smith that came in the kit. You'll get the same results, really. There's plenty of greens in there, and you can get some awesome combinations. Now I decided to place the panel, after I cut it down a little bit, onto a piece of bright green, almost neon green cardstock. This is going to be a matte, and I've put some fun foam on the back of that to lift it up. And then I'm going to put that on top of an A2 hot pink cardstock base that opens from the top on the long side. And then I'm going to put 3 of these pineapples, which I have put on some foam tape, 1 in the middle and 1 on each side. And then what I'll do is the middle ones in between are going to go flat onto the paper. Now I will point out to you, if you haven't already noticed, that little blob of purple on the middle pineapple. Not to worry, later on I used my mono sand eraser, and I was able to virtually eliminate that little blob of color. I didn't capture that in making this card, but I do later show another occasion where using that eraser really saved me from having to be unhappy with my card. I'm going to do just a few more things to finish this off. First, I'm going to put on these 3 sequins. Then I'm going to take out my gold Wink of Stella pen and kind of go over the leaf marks on the vine. And then finally, I'll take my clear Wink of Stella pen and go over the colored flesh part, or the fruit part of the pineapples. So I'm going to get started now with card number 2, and this is going to use some oxide inks and a very, very simple technique. I'm just going to put some ink down about 1 inch on my acrylic block. I'm going to spray water on it like you saw, and then smoosh it down onto an A2 size piece of watercolor cardstock. And you'll see that I applied the ink right back on that acrylic block after I sprayed water on it to get another application sometimes, and I wondered if that would harm at all my inks, but it doesn't seem to at all. So if you're wondering about that, I think it's okay to do. The first 2 colors I used here were Squeezed Lemonade and Cracked Pistachio. Next comes Mermaid Lagoon, which is such a pretty blue. And I picked this technique because it was simple and easy and quick, but also because you get such a great casual look with this technique. It's easy to do, it's quick to do. The result is pretty dramatic, I think. And you can use these nice bright colors to get a stripy effect that really works great for tropical or jungle style cards. So if you have oxide inks or regular distressed inks, the original ones from Tim Holtz, feel free to give this a try. It is, again, pretty simple, as you can see. Now the last colors I used were carved pumpkin, and then finally I used plain distress ink in this picked raspberry because I wanted a really bright pink, and I didn't have anything in my oxide collection. I've got to get this color and I just don't have it yet. So I used it and it worked as well. So clearly you can use either oxide inks or the original distress inks on this technique and you'll get good results. So after doing this, I'm going to set this aside to dry, and then I went ahead and stamped with clear Versamark ink the sentiment that says happy birthday. And I'm going to heat emboss this using black powder. So heat that up and I'll get a nice image against this white paper. I'm going to use my new cut-a-line ruler to cut my flag out nice and even and straight. I didn't show the whole process, but if you're interested in learning more about the cut-a-line ruler system, you can click on the link in the top right corner and you can see the video where I show a demo of that and talk about the pros and cons. Okay, so now that's all done. Now I've got my watercolor panel. It's all dried. I used my heat gun to help it along, and then I trimmed it slightly so that it would fit on an A2 white card base. And I used white because I thought it would play well with all the white space in my stripes, and I think that is a good result there. Now I applied the happy birthday flag on the card, and then I'm taking this image and I gold heat embossed it. Now I don't know if this is a feather or a fern, but either way I really like the image, so I am going to use it on this card along with 3 gems, and these are from Studio Katya. So there you have it, a very simple and quick but beautiful card. So I think it's pretty fitting that I do my third card with 3 flamingos, and this is going to be on marker paper, and I heat embossed this with clear Hero Arts embossing powder. Now you see that when I did this I got a little bit of a smudge there in black ink, and I used that mono sand eraser, and you can see it takes that right off. The eraser can really be a lifesaver when it comes to working with inks and watercolors. So next I'm going to take some of my Daniel Smith watercolor finally, and I'm going to apply some strokes here to mimic grass because I want my flamingos standing in some grass. I will use some additional inks to fill in both sky and the grass here, but to begin with I'm just playing around with the different colors of green in the Daniel Smith sample set and applying the different strokes to fill it all in. It's kind of fun, it's kind of relaxing. This is pretty telling that I am not a very good artist, but I try. Next I'm going to take some Tim Holtz Distress Oxide ink in Tumbled Glass and fill in some clouds. And I'm using the Tim Holtz retractable blending brush, which I, by the way, adore. I really like it for light applications of color like this. And I'll blend that in until I'm happy with it. To color in grass, I'm going to use the Oxide Cracked Pistachio color, and I'm going to do a similar thing that I did with the clouds on the grass part of this panel. And I'm going to use a little piece of scratch paper there to, rub the brush bristles against it a little bit before applying it directly onto my card panel, because sometimes you get some streaking or some splotching. Although if you do, you can just keep blending it. It will eventually kind of blend out. But for these light applications, you definitely don't want to get this great big blotch of dark color because it will never blend out completely if you go that far with it. For the flamingos, I'm going back to my Zig Clean Color markers. You can use some of the colors, the reds and the pinks that are in the Daniel Smith collection too. I opted for my Zigs because I'm very familiar with using these three color combinations on flamingos, and I like that, so I just went with it. It's light pink, light carmine, and pink, and then the legs are mustard with a little bit of the light pink over the top, and the beak is dark gray. So after I did the three flamingos, I went ahead and stamped Hello Friend in the black ink, and my card panel is pretty much ready to go. I'm going to put this directly onto a piece of black cardstock, which is going to act as a mat. The black is going to show up a little bit, about 1/4 of an inch on the top and bottom, and it's going to be flush on the right and left with my card panel. Then I'm going to take some fun foam again and apply that to the back of this double paneled piece. And the fun foam, of course, is going to give it a little bit of lift. And we use this lift to just give the card a little more interest. It makes it a little bit more fun, different, etc. And the fun foam just is not very thick, but just gives it just a little bit, and that's exactly what I want. Now I'm going to put that whole thing onto an A2 sized hot pink blank card base. I'm going to finish this one off with 3 sequins, and then finally I'll add a bit of clear Wink of Stella on the wings, and that will finish off this card. It really is so much fun for me to work with these bright colors. I love them. I know a lot of people don't like the bright colors, but it makes me happy, so this card kit was especially fun for me to have, because it gives me an excuse to use these bright colors. So there you go. Card number 4 is going to start with an A2 sized piece of marker cardstock. I'm going to use my blue painter's tape, and I'm going to mark off an area 3/4 of an inch off from the top and the bottom. This is going to create an area in between to work on. Now this is an 1.5 inch diameter circle that I cut out. Again, I used some post-it note paper for that and used my Zig 2-way glue on it to create a mask. And the mask here is going to be my sun. Now I'll start applying these 3 oxide ink colors. The first color is a red. It is called Candied Apple. And then the next color is Wilted Violet, and I'll mix these 2 colors together until they blend pretty nicely. And then I'm going to use Tumbled Glass on the top. And what this creates is really a sunset scene. And I'm going for, you know, that deep purple and pink and blue colors that you get at sunset. In this particular case, this sunset is going to be out on the savannah, and I'm going to feature that elephant on this card. So you'll see I just keep working these colors back and forth, intensifying the purple. In particular, I wanted to get some really good dark purple in there, and it's just layering it up layer by layer until it gets to the color and the blending that I am happy with. And so this is getting pretty close now. It just takes a little bit of time to do that. Now I'm going to peel off my mask for the sun, and I'm going to use Squeeze Lemonade, and I'm just going to fill in that white area with this yellow, this very, very bright yellow sun. And I'm using the blending tools from Tim Holtz for this as well, being as careful as I can just to stay within that circle. I did go out of the edges just slightly, so I came back with my purple, and it kind of gave it a little bit of a hazy look around the edges, which I kind of liked, because in the end that reminded me of, you know, heat wave that you see when it's really, really hot. So it's very subtle, but I thought it turned out pretty well. So there you have that color blocked section that I'm going to use as my backdrop, and I'm going to go ahead and stamp on the sentiment, "You amaze me." I really should have pulled out my Misty for this because my impression didn't turn out well, but I was lazy. I wanted to just get it done, and so that's what happens. But we did get this pen, this mono pen, in a previous Hero Arts kit recently, so I used it to just trace over and fill it in, and it looks just fine. So I made it work. I was not going to throw that away after all that blending. Now here you see my elephant silhouette and also the tree branch I'm going to use. I didn't like that little humpy thing, which is really, I think, a plant. But for whatever reason, I didn't like it. So I cut that off, and then I'm going to apply, as you can see here, my elephant and this tree trunk as a silhouette on top of the sunset background. I'm going to put this panel, which is cut down a little bit so that it's narrower than an A2 size card, or not as wide, I should say. And that red is going to hopefully set off that dark pink. And then I'm going to apply with double-sided foam tape both my silhouetted elephant and the tree trunk. And of course these are just cut out using the included dies so that I could get that silhouette appearance. I cut out 3 of the pieces of, I guess they're grass or whatever, I don't know, some kind of fauna, and I put 2 of them down flat, and then the third I put up on a piece of foam tape so it would stand up just a little bit. And then what I'll do is trim all the excess off. I got that one a little crooked, so I had to peel that off carefully and place it down again. So here you see I trim off the unwanted edges and get a pretty nice effect. To finish this off, I cut out 2 of the vines. This is the fancy die that was included with the set. It's the longer one that is straight, and so I just cut 2 of them out and put them together. I attach these just with a little bit of glue on every leaf, which is enough to secure it. And putting these together in the black, they look as if they're one big long vine. So it turned out really well in this black kind of silhouette look. So again, I trim off the excess, and that finishes off this card. I think it is a little different take on it, but I'm really pleased with it. So here we go with our last card today, and I'm going to stamp some of this grass as well as some of this little short plant. I'm sure somebody out there is going to know what that is. I don't know exactly. So I'm just using it as a short plant. I needed something a little short to go with my tall. So I'm going to use the Daniel Smith watercolors to do the grasses. I again use, I think, 3 different colors for that, just to get a little bit of depth and variety. After that, I'm going to go ahead and color in the shorter plant using the same method with the same colors. So I'm not going to show you everything here because it would be a little bit long. Now with these shorter plants, I'm just using the 3 colors again, but I painted them both at the same time. They're small enough that it seemed like a waste to me to clean off my brush in between and do one at a time. I just did them both. I forgot to mention too that again I used marker paper for this because I'm not using a lot of water, and I just thought it was a little bit easier to stamp on, to be honest. Your impressions are a little bit better because they're not dealing with the bumpiness of watercolor paper. But please don't think I'm saying you can't stamp on watercolor paper. You can. It just is a little bit more challenging when you have bumpier paper, and in my current stash I have some pretty bumpy watercolor. So I just went again with my heavy-duty marker paper, which did in fact work pretty well. So if nothing else, you know that'll work if you're in a similar spot. I'm coloring here the flamingo using the same colors and the same technique as I did on my previous flamingos, and then I'll cut those out. Then I'm going to start working on my card front. For the background, I've used some lightweight blue cloud paper. Then I cut a piece of bright yellow cardstock. It's 1.5 inches wide. And then I'm going to put on this large circle. It's going to represent sand. It's just kind of a distressed looking pattern. It's again a really lightweight designer paper, and I'm just going to trim those excess pieces off. You notice that I didn't cover the corners, the bottom corners, with that brown, but that's okay. It's going to be covered up by this, which is a piece of blue cardstock cut with a wave edge. I'm going to place that on top of all of those pieces. And what I'm trying to create here is the idea of a sand dune with a bright sun and some water. And now that I've got all that glued, I'm going to trim it down again. So this is a really simple way to build a layered scene using quite simple shapes. So far, so easy, right? Now next, I've cut out a frame from a die that I had in my stash, and I'm going to arrange my scene inside of this. I'm just kind of laying that out a little bit to figure out how it's going to work. So let's get building. Now, before I go too far with this though, I'm going to create a larger card base that this panel or this scene is going to go on. And I'm using that large included stencil that came with the kit and that has this really neat abstract leaf pattern on it. And I'm using different greens to complete this. Again, taking out those oxide inks. Love the oxides. They're so easy and fun to work with, and they make such great effects. Now, I didn't worry too much about blending because when you're using it over a stencil, the stencil kind of breaks it up anyway, so the blending isn't as important. It'll just kind of naturally look blended because of the breaking that you get with the pattern. And I'm going to apply the background with the sun and the dune and the water kind of a little bit on the top left corner, but I wanted to make sure that I had room for my frame yet and still have some green pattern showing on the left edge. And then I'm just kind of playing with where I'm going to put everything. So I have two of these tall grasses, and then I have two of the shorter plants. So I'm just going to arrange that inside this frame, using that as sort of a guide to make sure that I'm placing things pretty much where they need to be. So there's the left side, and now I'm working on the right side. I placed the grasses, both of them are flat right onto the panel, and then the plants are on one layer of foam tape, so they stand up a little bit. And now that I kind of know where things are going to be placed, it's time to put down my frame. So I've got some double-sided tape on that, and I peeled off the adhesive backing. I've got to pull it down here to make sure that I am putting the frame in the right place. But there you go, and you can see how that lifts it up a little bit, so it gives you that idea of looking into something. Now here's my flamingo, which I've also put on foam tape, and I rest his tail against that frame. And then I decided his little feet needed a little something to make it look like he was standing in water, so this is my attempt at ripples in water. Not very good, guys, but it's good enough. And a lot of that blue space is going to be covered. It's not going to stand out as much as it does right now. I'm going to place my flag. This is a flag that I cut using my cut-a-line ruler and put it on some double-sided foam tape, a little bit of glue there so that it rests on top of my frame as well. This is white heat embossed. And as you can see now, my ripples don't quite stand out as much. It just sort of blends in, which is a good thing. Now this is a different size card. It's a 5 3/4 by 5 7/8. I'll be making my own envelope for it. And then finally we've got the 3 flowers here with gems in the center, and this finishes off this card. I hope you liked the cards I did in part 1. Part 2 will be coming out as soon as I can get it done. So keep an eye out for that, and remember, I'll be using some add-ons next time. Well, once again, thank you for joining me here today. I really appreciate you visiting, and I've put up here the link to subscribe to my channel and also to a couple more videos that I think you might be interested in seeing if you like this one. So I hope to see you back soon, but until then, keep crafting. Bye!